Hello, everyone. Welcome to Equipping the Saints. I'm Ben Driver, and this is your 6-minute sermon. Let's get to work. Today, we are talking about son status. You are a son of God. Now, that sounds maybe a little crazy or a little bit like heresy, and I am not saying you are the Son of God. I believe that title only applies to Jesus Christ. But what I am saying is that you have been given the status of a son of God. Let me show you what I mean. Galatians chapter 3, and starting in verse 23, says, "Now before faith came, we were held captive under the law, imprisoned until the coming faith would be revealed. So then, the law was our guardian until Christ came, in order that we might be justified by faith. But now that faith has come, we are no longer under a guardian." And here's a key verse for us, verse 26. "For in Christ Jesus you are all sons of God through faith. So that as many of you as were baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is no male and female, for you are all in Christ Jesus. And if you are Christ, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to the promise." We are sons of God, and with that status of sonship is this idea that we have now faithful obedience. If you look at those first few verses, it says that we were under a guardian, in a sense imprisoned, held captive. And that word guardian is an interesting one. It means a tutor or a teacher or a caretaker. It was someone in that ancient world who took care of someone's child, making sure that they were cared for, that they got their education, that they got to school, that sort of thing. And what's interesting is it tells us that the law was that guardian or that teacher. Before Christ, we were under the law in the sense that we were being cared for, kept by the law of God. When I send my children to school, they have a certain set of rules, a certain standard that they must follow, and while they're there, they need to follow that standard. And if for some reason they don't, there would be consequences, perhaps from the school or perhaps from me. But when they're at my house, they have a different set of rules, a different set of standards. The law of God was that guardian, that teacher, that tutor. And when God's people, specifically the Israelites, were under that law, they were expected to keep that law and to follow it. But we're told now that faith has come, we are no longer under that guardian. Meaning, as Christians, I'm not under the Old Testament law. I'm not under that guardian anymore. And so things like the temple worship, the sacrificial system, laws given to Israel, and even the Ten Commandments are no longer binding on me as a Christian. But that doesn't mean I'm not expected to obey God. You see, in Galatians chapter 6 and verse 2, we are told, "Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ." I have a new standard, a new law, a new set of rules that I am to obey, but also I obey it from a different perspective. Under the law, I obeyed maybe out of fear, out of thinking I need to do this in order for God to accept me. But now that I have the status of a son, I obey because I know God already has accepted me. He already loves me. And so because he loves me and I have that relationship with him, I'm going to obey out of faith rather than out of fear. But also, son status brings complete oneness. Oneness with God and oneness with each other. We're told that it is through faith that we are all sons of God. But then in verse 27, it says, "For as many of you as were baptized into Christ have put on Christ. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is not male or female, for you are all one in Christ." When I, through my faith am baptized into Jesus Christ, it says, I put on Christ. I have a unity with him. I am united with Christ in his death, burial, and resurrection. If a child is at school or at a babysitter under a guardian or a teacher, they are far from their parents. But now, as Christians, we are united with Christ and with each other. We are one with Christ. But then it goes on to tell us that because of that, we have an inheritance. If you are Christ, then you are Abraham's offspring, heirs according to the promise. In our modern culture, to say that we are sons might seem strange. It might seem like we're forgetting about the women, about the daughters of God. But we're told that we're sons of God not because God is sexist, but because in that culture, a son had a greater share of the inheritance. If we're all sons, we all share in the inheritance of salvation.